Hey guys, Steve here, Ponics. Today we're going to talk about
growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Alrighty, let me introduce the next guest here. Our next guest is Angela TenBroeck. I hope I pronounced your TenBroeck. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. I recently learned it actually is a type of structure or defensive structure as well, that term. So I didn't actually realize it was actually the name of a thing until I was Googling you a little bit before this. So I really appreciate you taking the time. She is an expert in food safety and biosecurity and all things of those types of topics. So she's going to be here talking to us about how to address those types of things in our cannabis facilities. She works with a lot of both vegetable and cannabis people out there doing just this type of thing. So really, really excited to have her on, and kind of someone that you don't hear from enough in our industry. And we definitely need to hear these types of voices much more and try to help steer us in this direction. So thanks a lot, and take it away.
All right, thanks for having me. I need to be able to share my screen so that I can begin my talk, if that's possible.
Sure, yeah, just there on the bottom there, it says share screen in green, and then you can pick.
It just tells me that the host has disabled it.
Oh, shoot, hold on a second. I apologize, 1 second.
Steve broke it.
I apologize, I'll fix it, 2 secs.
I cut my hair just for you guys today.
Oh, looks great.
You know, Steve has the other half of my hair.
I brushed it. That's all.
I know you guys. Y'all all have my other half of my hair.
Trying to find the setting for it here. Oh, here we go. All right. All right. All right, cool. Should work now.
Awesome. Let's do this. No worries. We're gonna get this done.
If we run late too, we'll make sure it's not a big deal.
It's all good. All right. So my favorite thing to do when I meet with cannabis growers is to talk about the medicine. So I first encountered this term when I was working on a food safety for when they were kind of walking in the state of Florida's hemp and medical cannabis information. And I kept hearing these people talk about their medicine. Don't take away my medicine. So my talk today is your medicine safe? So a little bit about me so that you can kind of know who's talking to you. I have owned and operated more than 100,000 square feet of aquaponics in the last 5 years. And we were the first aquaponics facility in the world to get SQF certification. That is what sets out aquaponics to become a commercial operation. And so today I'm in the midst of building this thing that you see here. I'm currently building phase 1, which is a 26,000 square foot facility that is a decoupled system. It looks a little bit like Steve's system in a way. But we grow 31 different items, not in the cannabis space. So you're hearing from a person who not only works in food safety for the future of aquaponics, but as well is farming in that space. So that's just a little bit about me. We are 4 generations of greenhouse growers since the 1970s. Started at 5 years old in the greenhouse. So have a few experiences, that I can share with you. So let's talk about where ag tech is now. Where are we now and where will we go? So farm equipment, we have inorganic and nutrition, fertilizers, we have robot sensors, we have all sorts of stuff. And we have just-in-time farming. I think that you're going to find the cannabis space is going to go to this using a lot of these sensors and so forth. Steve talks about a lot of the amazing portion of why we grow the way we grow. But I think the most important thing that we think about is our future. And so as we think about our future, let's think about the tech of growing indoors. So plants that grow differently in different conditions, if we do CEA, we're actually able to produce for our local folks 24/7, 365 production. It also allows us to better be able to grow because we're able to manage our temp, our pH, our humidity, and the mechanics of the greenhouses. The tools also allow less labor, which allows us to have a smarter workforce. I'd like to give a shout out to Artemis. So if you guys haven't heard about this, so by the time my talk is done, you'll understand why maybe a platform system such as Artemis could help you be able to manage for food safety and quality. And irrigation, which is the most important thing and resource that we use in farming, many of us aquapons are interested in making sure that we are doing doing well as we do good. And so as part of that, we want to make sure that we are, not having runoff and so forth. So a lot of the reasons why we farm has to do with not only, this amazing product that we can produce, but as well, the opportunity to be able to reduce water and resource, suppression. So the future of harvesting in tech and farming is harvesting. And so you'll have autonomous farming equipment. Now that the big boys, so to speak, have gotten into our space, you're going to see a lot more tools that allow us to grow smarter and, pack and harvest and so forth. And you may wonder why I'm talking about these things. And I think you'll kind of gather and capture that as my presentation goes. I like to talk about the autocart. While the autocart is ingrained today, I believe it will be something such as autocart will be in our future tomorrow, which is the autonomous harvesting and so forth. And then you have the robots, which we call the sweepers. So both of those are things that you can look up and see a little bit more of information. So let's start to the meat of my real conversation here. Why does food safety matter? Why does it matter in the cannabis space? Well, besides the obvious of you could be sued and you could lose your opportunity to grow, or you could go to prison, it gives you an opportunity for marketing your higher quality products. This is a really important piece as cannabis becomes more mainstream and you have the opportunity to sell it on the wide market. So as a multi-generational food grower, what we have found is that we find little sticks that try to put our program ahead of everyone else's. So as you grow and you want to become more profitable, you want to have things that you can call out to the people who may buy your food or your consumer so that they can know that your product is the highest quality they can get. I also want to point out, and you're going to hear me talk about this each time you hear me speak, if one of us fails in aquaponics, then all of us can fail. And I don't want to sound too motherly here, but I want to remind you that the work that you do in these early stages really does matter. And so you must be mindful of the fact that it's not only about you, but it is around all of the people who are involved in aquaponics. There's also the ethics of food safety, which gives you a base. The SOPs, standard operating procedures, plans for consumer consumption, and it defines your science. What you have heard in the prior conversation with Steve and those guys and Marty is the fact that you have an opportunity to do some really good science in the early stages of this. So why should I consider food safety as part of my business? If you want to expand nationally or internationally, you will want to be able to prove what you do. Currently, tinctures, topicals, edibles, and smoke, it will become regulated. And in many places, it already is. I'm seeing consumers when I go to the local cannabis stores asking for COAs. So you need to make sure that you're doing your data. So my favorite thing to say is, do what you say what you do, and prove it. And you prove that not by your conversation, not by your work, but by somebody else validating your work. Your retailers and consumers will at some point require you to be able to provide more than just your COA. So I'm going to suggest that you begin baseline data. So how do you know your water's safe? Many of you probably have seen this picture in your very own farm, and you know that your radial flow or depending upon how you flow your sediments also depends upon how you manage your water. So do you test your water? If you really want to become food safe and moving forward into this regulation, embrace the regulations now. So by the rule, you should start your baseline as soon as you begin your farm to know where you may have an issue. You may say to me, but wait, if I know I have an issue, I don't want to tell anyone. Well, I think you want to know where your problem is. I think you want to be able to address your problem with science and management. So if you know there's a possibility of a contamination or a pathogen issue, you want to be able to monitor it. You want someone else to say, yes, they sent me their water. Yes, they sent me their product. And this is what it says. So you know your numbers and you're able to defend your numbers. So as long as you know your numbers, the rules state you can do this, you can't do that. They don't really do that. The rules state use science as your decision. Use science. So you can develop your plan and make sure that you really know what's happening in your system. This is going to require that you have drawings of how your water flows. You're going to know how to track all of your products and a variety of other things. If you want to enter this and be successful in your role, you must remove the obstacles so that you are able to. So, biological soil amendments, raw manure, which is what many people are going to talk about when they get all in a dither about aquaponics. We can overcome this. It has to do with your terminology. Fish manure, fish waste is a soil amendment, okay? So you have to have something to transition that solid fish waste to that liquid plant food. And I would encourage you to really pay attention to the guidance that has been given to the produce industry so that you will be able to embrace and not have these hiccups. I know that it was once illegal to be growing in places and you've done this way and you've made money at it, but now we've turned the page and you must turn the page as well. So, terminology matters. What do you call it? How do you deal with your amendments? What are your SOPs for seeding, for harvesting, for storing, for movement, for recall? What are your plans? You need to have a plan and an SOP in place for each one of these. And if I come to your facility and there's people who I work with in the cannabis space, they will tell you, you want to have your plans and SOPs in place before Angela gets there, because she's going to walk through and point out everything that she can so that you are successful. You want to use someone like me before your real auditor comes in for your SQF or your GAP or your Primus certifications, because I'm going to point out as a grower, as a PCQI, SQF, HACCP individual, these are your issues. I'm going to get on my hands and knees and I'm going to put light on stuff that you haven't thought about. That is the advantage of working with someone who's in this space, doing what you're doing, trying to make sure that none of us fails so all of us can succeed. So this is my favorite thing. So the flow chart for seed to harvest production, do you have one of these? Do you know how things come in? When your seeds come in, who checks them in? Who knows what the lot number is? Who makes sure you have first in, first out? Who makes sure that if you have failure, do you go back to the seed company? If you have, in many states, I know in the hemp space, they are requiring you to have a certain propagation percentage. So you need to make sure that you're able to do that for your reporting purposes, because even though hemp is now a commodity and cannabis, higher THC products will become a commodity, I am anticipating very soon, you must have your action and process in place so that you are able to maintain your license and maintain consumer confidence. It is the most important thing you will do. How do you start? How do you finish? How do you know who's using your product? What is your documentation along the way? How are you able to prove what you're doing and doing what you're proving, saying? So this is my favorite flow chart is, okay, the seeds come to you. You've put them in propagation. What's happening? How many sprouts did you get? Or if you're getting clones, is it true? Are these COAs right? What kinds of situations? What kind of ads are you having as you're planting and growing? The task is, how do you document all this? What's the variety? What's the amount planted? What's the location? Steve has covered this very well in his last presentation about he decouples, he has each house running on a very specific system. That redundancy matters so much. And it will matter if you ever get a major outbreak so that you won't lose your whole crop. So these things are things that you should consider very, very important. Document what you do as you progress. So biosecurity. My favorite thing to ask is, where's your biosecurity plan? And people look at me like I'm, what's that? So your biosecurity plan is an actual plan that you have that is preventive. So if you have, if you're going to have a tornado, if you're going to have a storm, if you're going to have, what's going to happen? Who, where, what? If you're not there, who's going to call the what police? What people do we call? How do we call them? It also prevents, you have a whole portion of your biosecurity that talks about pest prevention and invasions and so forth. What do you do? Your biosecurity plan is the plan that you utilize, that you build for your farm, for your spot. So if you're not there and you're on vacation and you have a major malfunction, who do we call first? How do we get gas off? What's the water company's name? Do you have a water company? Do you have a well person? If you have a major disaster, how are you going to make sure that your products remain, highest quality and so forth? This is the plan that you write, that if you write this plan efficiently and effectively, you will pass every state and most governments around the world's plan for food safety and biosecurity. The other thing that you must consider is that there are times when people do things, they come onto your farm in the after hours, and there's possibility of they may do things to taint your facilities. And because we work an environment that is a very symbiotic environment between the fish and the plants and so forth, you have to manage for not only your plant system, but for your fish system. What if somebody pours in something? What if you have an angry employee? How do you manage all that? You have to have a plan in place. So what does this look like? When you come to our farms, you're going to sign in. I'm going to walk you around and I'm going to manage where you work, where you walk. If you come to work for us, we have a very specific plan and manner in which you work. If you work in fish, you don't work in plants. Or if you work in plants, you don't work in fish. If you do, you have a whole sanitation and hygiene procedure that you work. The other thing is that I notice on many farms, many times people have other animals besides their aquaponics system. We must plan and manage for those things. So you have facility movement issues. So how do you move your feed carts from your chickens to your fish? Do you move them? Do you interact? Is the person who's feeding the chickens the same person who's feeding the fish? You must be mindful of these things, because when your auditor comes, they're going to ask that. And this will be part of you becoming the very best farm facility and the grower that you can be. It will be profitable in the future for you, I assure you. How do you do biosecurity? You're going to have an SOP in place. You're going to have a food safety plan. You're going to have management plans, hierarchy. You're going to tell me, if I'm a fish keeper, what do I do here? If I'm only in the grow space, what are my tasks? What education do I have to have? What's my job description? What do I do on Monday? What do I do on Tuesday? What do I do on? I'm going to ask you all those questions, because your facility at this point should have a bit of management plans when you are running your facility. The other thing that's important is your maintenance of your facility. In an aquaponics facility, it is very important that you maintain your facility at the highest quality that you can. This means that you have a plan for how you maintain your biosolids, your raw manure, your soil amendment, whatever you want to call it. You must have a plan and maintain your facility so that every week someone knows it's happened and someone has agreed and signed off their name that these specific things occurred in your facilities. So that's kind of food security and biosecurity in a nutshell. What I always like to do is stop my presentation right here and begin to answer questions. So Marty, Steve, anybody, we have any questions so far?
I haven't seen any pop up in chat just yet, but let's give them just a minute to take a look. I just wanted, I mean, while we're waiting, I want to say thank you for bringing up so many great points and stuff that I feel like don't get brought up when it comes to talking about growing. A lot of times we get so focused on plants and how they grow and what they do and what they look like and how pretty they are and how much they yield and so many things that I've seen very successful growers try to make the jump to say, let's say, less than legal markets to the business world. And so many of the things that you talk about in here are things that they struggle with because you don't have these in a lot of traditional grows. We'll say, again, less than legal grows. So if you want to know, you know, the headaches that you can avoid, you know, this presentation, the stuff you just talked about is the note taking you should take. So let's see here. I don't see any questions so far. Steve, did you have anything?
The one thing I was going to re-emphasize, or just would love to have you maybe touch on again, is one, the value of good SOPs, and two, how you really should, you have to have those really to get started, and how a lot of people kind of jump into it and then want to hire a consultant after the fact and then expect them to do their normal rate for SOPs. And that's just completely unrealistic. There's a lot of time and effort and research that goes into all that, and they don't, you know, so I think there's maybe not a true appreciation for those. Maybe that's something you want to touch on.
Yeah, so the most important thing that I notice is that in aquaponics, there seems to be a lot of discourse on system design, whether it's, you know, I sit at each conference, you know, I've been in this space. So my family's been hydroponic growers since the 1970s. And I, you know, entered the space in 12. And so, and I always remember my great-grandfather when he was doing the Dutch method in the 1970s and all the conversations about how they would tweak it and make it better and this and that. And there was a lot of sharing and conversations going on. And so I always, whenever I go to the aquaponics conferences around the world, I always kind of smile to myself because all of you guys are always arguing about the, you know, can this be scaled? My system's better than yours and this and that. And I always say to myself, well, they all grow food. They may grow it differently, but are they safe? Does it cut the mustard in the professional commercial world? Because really, I believe that the way in which we can solve hunger and our medical situation in the future is by embracing the, you know, the small, medium-sized commercial or family farm that allows them to be commercial and have a living. And so I always smile when they start talking about system design and so forth, whereas we really need to jump past that and into, we always need to have the Steves of our world who are talking about their cutting edge technology and science and so forth. But as well, we need to be thinking about how can you make money in this? How can you feed people better? How can you make better medicine? How are you able to do this? And so it really matters that once you have decided you're going to enter this world and you've decided that this is the system you're going to run, while yes, you should, you know, consult with the best folks around. But once you do that, you need to be thinking about who are you going to get on your team as a consultant or a full-time person to run the biosecurity and food and safety of your place. I see a lot of times people do things that are really not acceptable in a commercial realm because they think they don't have the money, whereas if they started smart, they would finish smart.
We have some questions now.
Yeah.
So I guess the one I just pasted, have you seen any good IAVS systems, or is that a dead horse? That's the sand bed stuff with putting the fish waste on the sand.
I have actually seen those systems work. I've seen them work, and I know where I know they work is in India. I've seen them where we've seen them, you know, but I'm not really an expert in that area, so I stick to what I know. And that's not, I don't know much about that, but I can tell you that I have seen them, grow some stuff. The other questions I see is, what is the most common issue you see in regards to food safety that seems like common sense, but a lot of people miss it? Well, washing your hands and gloving is probably the most interesting thing. And when I'm in a facility, I am almost always, there are two things that I think that I always notice. The first thing is you cannot have your pets in your facility. That's the first thing. The second thing is your hand washing and gloving techniques really do matter. And so those are, to me, really very common sense, things. So that's my first answer to that. The next question is what, Angela, what is Artemis? Artemis is a platform that allows you to be able to track and monitor your facility front to back. Allison Koff was once called AgriList, and now she has merged and now is Artemis. They have a really great platform, and I would encourage you, if you're looking to have some traceability and so forth, that program can assist you. How would you write an SOP for smaller scale operations? It doesn't matter if you have a one-man operation, you should have an SOP. You should have SOPs for everything you do. So how do you do it? An SOP is simply, how do I do this? What am I trying to make sure happens? And then I'm signing off once a week that these things have happened.
I think one of the other big things I always make sure I include my SOPs is what equipment are you using? Sorry about the background. What equipment are you using? And then and mainly also, what are the cleaning procedures for that equipment? Doing cleaning procedures for each of your equipment that you can always pair with that item makes your life a lot easier, because you don't have to rewrite that 10,000 times. You just write it once and then copy and paste that into any set that includes that item.
Well, yes, Steve. So one of the things that we do is we do SOPs for everything. So we would have an SOP for hand washing, for walking through the facility, for gloving, for all those kinds of things. Then you would have a maintenance program that's an SOP for each. So for your tanks, for all of your pumps, I have SOPs for even the airlines and stones, and I mean, we have an SOP, and so one person is responsible for very, very specific things based upon their position as a greenhouse associate in our facility. So how would you write an SOP for a smaller scale? I would just simply say to you, if you want to have a hygiene SOP, that would be one thing. So hand washing, your cleaning and management. The other thing I would have an SOP for is your equipment, such as Steve. The other thing is also make sure that you don't have your cleaning supplies are not crossing over. That's a really important thing. So anyway, so what are some of the ways you are being sustainable in energy consumption? So we actually use we use gravity and a variety of other physics principles and so forth to design and build our facilities. So we use less pumps, and that allows us to do that. We as well have done a new design in our greenhouse with this build that allows us to use less exhaust. And so we're researching this new design, and I'll be able to tell you at the next conference how it's going to work out for us. It says, what is the best book available now to set up the plumbing for my first home setup? I want to have a lot of fish, so demineralization included. I would simply say to you, you're going to have people in the next day that you will be able to listen to. And many of those folks have given free shareware online on how to set up your system. There's some really easy, simple systems that you could run. And I say keep it simple and so forth. So what design considerations are important for system safety? So one of the really important things that I know that you guys are going to yell at me when I tell you this, but I don't have wood in our facilities. And the reason is because it's for the maintenance and so forth of the facility. We are a water environment. And so therefore we must maintain hygiene of our internal system water, but as well, water is going to get out. And so I always say to people, be very, very mindful of where you have your wood, because you have to have in your SOPs how you're going to clean it. I have actually worked recently with someone as a consultant. They had a downy issue or a fungus and some other issues occur in their greenhouse. And it was simply because the wood that they simply could just not get it clean. So you should be cleaning your facilities on a very regular basis. And so it's really important for design considerations that you are able to clean these places in a way that, so when you come to my facility, people often make fun of us because they say that we are medical grade clean, but it allows us to reduce our pest intrusions. So therefore we are able to have, some advantages for that. The next question is how would you write an SOP for a smaller, okay, we have that. Is Salmonella a risk in aquaponics? What are other possible bad ones? So I always test, actually each month I test for Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria. And so I always test for these. And if you have chickens in your midst or birds in your midst, you probably should test for Salmonella because it seems to be kind of something you happen in the midst. Let me just give you an example. When I was building one of my previous farms, we once a month we would do tissue and water collection and send out to a third-party lab to examine our materials. And one month I got a call that said, "Hey, something's on your lettuce products. You seem to have this." And I always say test further, and then I'm going to send you. So my protocol is if I get a possible positive, I take from the same area, because before we harvest, 1 week before we harvest, we always test our products, send them to the lab 1 week before harvest, and we know what area we are going to harvest. And in that week, it gives us time, if we were to have a positive, we could eliminate the whole area and retest to make sure it wasn't just a false positive. And 1 year we actually had, or 1 month, we actually had a concern. And so we went back through and sent back the protocol for how we manage that. And what we found was that we were building our other facility, and the trucks that were bringing in the dirt, the dump trucks that were going around our facility actually had the soil that was brought in for the leveling of it actually brought in something into our facility. So it's really odd. Even though I have 50 mesh on my curtain, we have all the preventive controls you can do. We had to make sure that we manage that appropriately. So that's, just one of those examples of, it may not be in your system, it could just be in your midst. Okay, it says the next question is, curious if the E. coli and other bad guys are still a concern in deep sand beds, being you have a lot of good biology. I think that you must be concerned with E. coli and all of those other things, no matter what you do. You must know where your issues are and be able to go from there and eliminate or manage what could be your future issue. Steve, Marty?
I think that's about the only other thing I was going to say with E. coli is I've personally had 2 aquaponic cannabis facilities test hot for non-human pathogenic E. coli, where it was detectable but not in the form that's a worry for humans.
I'll be glad to talk about that.
And we were able to eliminate it via lactobacillus inoculation.
Right.
Over the course of 2 weeks.
Yeah, and Steve, that's actually very common in our facility. So what's going to happen is you're going to do a fecal coliform and a variety of other things. And what's going to happen is your lab is going to call you and say, you have high fecal coliform. Why, yes, we do. And so you ask them to continue the testing to see if it is the human pathogen. And science proves that the E. coli that's in the gut of fish generally do not make any humans sick. And so we use science to guide our conversations and questions. Many times I see people when I go to aquaponics facilities that are homegrown facilities, what I see is a lot of people don't have some sort of processor. We'll call it a bioreactor, clarifier, swirl tank, whatever. They simply run fish to their plants. And there presents some issues if you are going to try to scale that. So you must be mindful. And I would suggest that you would meet with folks that are, you have, Steve, put together a lineup of people who can really, who have experience and who do this on a daily, who could assist in that. And so, yes, lactobacillus, there are other things that you can do that are very easy and common to manage for pathogens and pests.
We had another question. Is the main tool for cleaning pressure washers, or what chemicals are you using? Can you talk a little bit more about cleaning in general?
Yes, actually, I will be glad to. So we use high pressure washing. So let me kind of talk to you about how this looks. So you come into my facility, you're going to walk into a series of sanitation. So you're going to walk onto rocks, and then you're going to walk through foot baths. And then you're going to walk onto sticky papers. And then you're going to walk into a negative pressure room. And then you're going to enter a containment area. And you're going to have a very specific way in which you walk in our facility. Every day that we are in that facility, the foot wash or the foot bath, the rug, and the containment areas are all washed down. And we use we have a PPT for chlorine. We don't use quat in our facilities. We have an expectation for a certain amount of PPTs of chlorine and we wash down with a chlorine solution that has a little bit of basically soap in it that allows the surfactant to sit on. So this is all ground washing. From there, in our facilities for our fish, we have very specific cleaning tools for fish. So we use, depending upon where we are washing. So in our fish tanks, we wash inside of our fish tanks. So the fish keeper actually washes weekly all of the interiors of our fish tanks as far as their arm will go. We wash all of our pipes and so forth. If the pipe has some sort of, we'll call it gradu or crud, we would take the pipe off. We have unions at each spot, take the pipe off and run it in through a bleach solution that is, we have a dipstick for how many PPTs we accept so that we don't have too much bleach, because too much bleach actually is not a good thing as well. And then we rinse it, wash it, clean it off of the debris, rinse it really well, and then let it air dry, and then we put it back in. And so we do that. We haven't had any issues with the bleach killing anything or so forth. Many growers use quat. You can use quat as well. I just don't care for it. Our folks seem to like to use that as well. The other thing is all my inlet waters and all my exit waters are maintained with, we do clean them in the manner in which I just shared with you, as well as within our trays and in our rafts and variety of other things. We do a very specific maintenance when we are harvesting. So every 30 days on a lettuce harvest, in a tomato, pepper, celery, depends upon what we're harvesting, depends upon the cleaning, but every week we maintain the pipes and exteriors of the grow area and then the floor around that area. We maintain our fish tanks, and on a harvest, we harvest every week, once or twice a week. We maintain a very specific protocols, and then everything is washed down and everything is replaced, cleaned.
Awesome.
Looks like we have more questions.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions from chat. It says, could you explain more information on cleaning mini splits and other air ducts?
Yes. Okay, so mini splits, air conditionings are really interesting. We utilize them in our facilities because we found that mini splits, when you run them with, we run them with our coolers, and they also allow us to pull water out. So because you were in an aquaponics environment, many times people get condensate, and now you can purchase anti-condensate plastics and so forth. But as well, we use our mini splits and we maintain them. We clean them on a very monthly. basis. And we have an expectation for how we maintain where the air flows out and stuff like that. The next question is aquaponics student and USDA hardiness on 4A. What are the most important things to take into consideration when setting up an SOP? So we build facilities in the Pacific Northwest and Delaware. We have them, we work all over. And so you must maintain your facility. You must build for your environment, obviously. And so I would say to you that your SOPs are not going to change as far as how you move, how you operate internally. Your system design is going to matter. So if you're growing, a very specific fish that is, say, like a tilapia that's a warm water fish, you would obviously need to maintain your water in a certain parameter and then have your plants that grow within those parameters. If you're going to do such as Kitsap Farms up in the Pacific Northwest or Bear Hole Farms in Selbyville, Delaware, they're maintaining their facilities year round by very specific controls that we have implemented within their systems. So this would be just, starting out, I would say to you, let's just keep it simple and buy yourself some cattle water heaters, put them in your fish tanks, and you can begin right there. I can buy those off Amazon every day, and really they will keep your system warm. You'll size it based upon, how many gallons you have and so forth. But I would encourage you, no matter where you are, you will be able to grow food if you do it, thoughtfully and utilize the knowledge of the people who've already been there and done that. So introducing beneficial predatory insects and nematodes jeopardize the safety of your system. Yes, so we actually must be mindful of the beneficials that we add. Charlie McKenzie is one of my favorite guys to talk about this. I would say to you that you would not want to do that when you're fixing to have a harvest. You want to be mindful of that, especially if you are going for designations of, say you want to have kosher weed. There will be a thing, and you will be able to get designations in such a way. So you want to be mindful of what beneficials that you do add and the manner and the timing in which you do add them.
I want to ask a question on that. Have you seen any beneficials vector anything that would potentially be a food safety issue?
Yes, we have had some, I'm going to say it like this. You must buy your beneficials from people who are certified and they certify their products. Because anything you add, that is part of that SOP that I talk about, and that's part of that flow chart that I talk about. You want to be able to make sure, and the new rule, folks, the new rule that just came out from the USDA has to do with the management of our water. And one of those things that you're going to talk about is and things that they're not only going to ask you about what you put in as far as chemicals, but they also want to know what beneficials you're using, because in some states there are some beneficials that really are considered invasive, and so you have to have a plan for how you're going to maintain them. And so really pay attention to that so that you aren't getting anything that's going to bring in a vector or pathogens on just not really meaning to, but they will. And so you must be careful of that. The other thing that you want to be mindful of is if you're going for designations, for the kosher designation or a halal, or if you want to go for any of those designations, you need to be mindful, because heck, that's a whole area of business that people aren't thinking about that could really be an opportunity for you to set apart, your kosher or halal. So anyway.
Awesome. Is there any other, pest management practices that you've seen potentially vector issues? Any biocontrols or anything else that maybe is becoming a problem as far as maybe false flags or other issues?
Yep, I see sometimes people use things. So many times people are shooting for this organic designation. And so they are looking to try to reduce pests using, some sort of something that they think is organic and has the OMRI approval. That doesn't always mean it's the best. The other thing is that you must change up and maintain in your scouting routine. So part of your food safety and pest prevention and biosecurity has to do with how you scout. So when you're walking through your facility, do you know the sounds? Do you know the smells? Do you know the way it's supposed to hit? You know, I can get out of my truck at the farm and I can tell you if there's a pump out or if something's gone wrong. You need to know your facility that well. And so the smell is the most important thing that you should pay attention to. And in the cannabis space, what I find is that it's not so much that you're getting pathogens that are coming up your roots. What I'm finding is it's the pesticides that are on top of it. And so we have been trying to mitigate with biosecurity plans. We are really, so that you have containment rooms and so forth before you get to your crop, so that you are able to really reduce the amount of pesticides and chemicals that you're having to use foliar, you know, on your plant's leaves and such, so that you don't have these issues. You know, ideally, Steve, it would be great if we could never have to put anything on them. But we do know that people bring in stuff on their clothes. And that's the most important thing that people don't, that's common sense to me. And a lot of people do not pay attention to these common sense. So animals in your facilities, hand washing, and the clothes you wear. If you have been romping and stomping over there in the chicken yard or in the fish house and you've got fish crap all over you, change your shirt, wash your hands, okay? And pay attention to what you bring in. Your clothes are your vectors. Your shoes are the things that are bringing in stuff to your greenhouse. Don't think that, no, many times it's the human interaction that has done what we have is the major problem within the facility.
All righty. Is there, I guess on that note too, is there any beneficials that you've seen cause more problems than they solve? I can think of one, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I've seen a variety of, I've seen parasitic wasp. I've seen all sorts of things. I have actually seen where, workers have had some issues with some of the things that have been brought in. Yeah, I mean, Steve, you and I have talked about this. So, we can go back and forth, and I don't want to poo-poo anybody's, beneficials and predatory insect stuff, but there are, I'll just say it like this, they're not all created equal.
I was just going to say that ladybugs definitely don't pull the weight that they traditionally have told to have pulled.
Yeah, ladybugs are not your friends always. They don't really do anything. To be honest with you, I mean, ladybugs are fun, friendly, and they're beautiful in your facility, but don't use them.
I always tell people they're wonderful for childhood education, and that's about it.
I agree with you. I think there are so many other opportunities to do better, and the science has proven this. Just leave your ladybugs outside and leave them be. They carry a lot in with them. And if you ever see how they're transported to you, I'll never forget, I had 1 million come to me one time in my first facility, and we were not using them for inside. We were using them for our outdoor crops because, we do recirculating agriculture. So we not only do aquaponics, but we as well use our aquaponics fluids on the soils outside in our orchards and such. And so we were utilizing them outside, and then all of a sudden we go to our greenhouse, and all around the greenhouse door were the ladybugs. I mean, literally covered. The next week or two, we get a different pathogen than we had ever seen, and it was directly related to the ladybugs.
Anybody that I've ever encountered using ladybugs, I've always suggested, like, hey, just whatever you're spending now on ladybug, just spend it on lacewings and tell me that it doesn't make a difference. And nobody has ever gone back to ever buy ladybugs again. So feel free to take me up on my challenge.
I'm a lacewing queen. I love me some lacewings.
And they're relatively the same price. They're much more effective. They can't fly away, but they still cover lots of ground. I mean, if you're spending money on ladybugs, take that money, spend it on lacewings for just one application, and tell me that you don't see a difference, because that's never happened.
I'm with you, Marty. I'm with you. I'm trying to do so many biosecurity controls that I don't have to use any of them, but I do use lacewings. And like I said, Charlie McKenzie is one of my favorite guys on the beneficials. I mean, his crop talk, crop walk is always very interesting. If you've never heard Charlie talk about that.
There was do you want to tell us a little bit more about your orchard growing? Yeah, and using the fish waste for offline a little bit. That's one of the things that we have a guy talking about extensively tomorrow, but there's a lot of soil growers. I think a lot of people that are watching this right now aren't necessarily aquaponic growers. Maybe they're soil growers or otherwise cannabis growers who are thinking about how can I incorporate this into my larger permaculture design.
Yep. So, you know, we prescribe to permaculture. We believe the 8 layers is the way of the future, and it's going to regenerate our soil for carbon sequestration. And so all of our facilities are built to exceed, you know, we want to repair the earth. And so in that repair, so we are, you know, our statement is we build health and wealth in communities, starting with the soil up. And so what we do is we have in our orchard area, we have piped a 2-inch pipe out of our greenhouses for our bottom solids. Whereas it goes into our orchards to fertigate out there for because our water has the microbes that is needed to feed the soil. And many times you'll find that you'll be able to make better soil with the aquaponic discharge or solution. You know, and because we are a large grower operation, you know, we're starting with 26,000 square feet soon, and we will go into almost 80,000 square feet within phase 2. We'll be actually, around 80,000 square feet. With that, we have to manage for not only now we have impervious pavements. You know, we have to manage for where our water flows. So we have a 1-acre pond, and in that 1-acre pond, that's where our water goes from our greenhouses, the roofs. So we have 0 runoff. I'm also on a watershed that is injured. And so when we bought this facility, it allowed us to be able to rehab, not only do well within our community, but to do well for the earth. And so we took over the largest meat fish operation in the Southeast at Anguilla Farms. And we'll produce around 24 tons of hybrid striped bass once we're up and operational in our first phase. In our second phase, we will have 48 tons. And so a collective, 24 and 48 tons. So we have a commercial operation of hybrid striped bass, decoupled system that's kind of proprietary to us. And then part of that is that we have the outflow of the pond water plus is the normal way in which it's irrigated. And then our nutrient water, which is irrigated differently in a drip irrigation method. Now, let me talk to you real quick. Most of you probably are recognized that you can actually get a USDA greenhouse for $10,000 or less that you can do orchard-based growing. So if you are interested in growing into the ground and using fish fertilizer for your operation, you can actually get a USDA greenhouse if you have already your farm track number and your wetlands and all of that USDA paperwork done. So I'm actually speaking at the Aquaponics Association about this sort of thing. So we actually do drip irrigation. Our greenhouse, the water is already out to our fields. We were doing flood drain furrow from there.
That's really awesome. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't really realize how much they can hybridize those wonderful aquatic microbes with their terrestrial growing. Remember, and it was a NASA study, I believe, that was cited at one of the recent aquaponic conferences, association conferences, that 78% of those microbes can live in a terrestrial and an aquatic environment. So, all those wonderful mineralizing microbes you're making in your aquatic system, almost 3/4 of them are live in your orchard. So people don't realize that.
Well, the interesting thing is that I have, and during my science, we do all of our facilities. We have our practice is that we have a R&D facility that we practice everything out of. And so what we found was that it was like kind of like time release, and it didn't burn the plants. And so we were able to grow peaches, sugarcane, we utilized, the soil was very compacted, so we did a turnip and radish, field. And then in our current facility, we've been breaking the ground with onions, and then doing soil building by, we don't do till. So we knock down and then plant on top. So we do recirculating, we call it recirculating agriculture. So we utilize our fish waste. And so you can actually go into the field and see the what we call the solid gold that's in the field, and it just time releases, and it doesn't, and if it flows, say if we had a flood situation, it won't hurt the river. That's the most important thing.
And this is critically important because if anyone's been following the California's rules, all cannabis involving an aquatic nutrient solution has to be recirculating starting, was it next year? Or I forget what date next year, but sometime next year. So if you're a producer in California, switching to aquaponics, if you're a hydroponic producer, can absolutely save you from some of the up and coming regulations. And it's only a matter of time before those similar regulations spread to Europe and Canada and then other parts of the United States as well.
I actually work in Europe and in the Caribbean, and what we're finding is that they're early adopters because they see the importance of it. Because like, for instance, some of the countries that were on communist rule and the manner in which they cut their lands to feed everyone, it took the topsoil off. What we allow is that if you put your aquaponics solids or solutions onto the grounds, it actually allows you to build soil. And so all of that topsoil can actually be rejuvenated faster is my belief. And so that is what we're finding is because our small spoke farms, which are the farm and goes, we call fooderies, actually are on brownfields. And so we build those on the brownfields because no one knows what to do with them. We don't use the dirt. And what, if any stuff, when we're doing our outdoor permaculture stuff, it actually helps the ground rejuvenate.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like our time is just about up. Do you want to tell everybody how to find you, how to find out about your resources and everything else? We have some links in the chat. I'll make sure if we're missing any, we'll get those in there.
All right, so you can find us. Our large farm operation is marinelandaquaponics.com. Our smaller operation is the foodery, as fooderyfarms.com. You can find our consultant business at aquahortusfarms.farm. And you can always, I left you in my PowerPoint. You can ring me up, call me up. Some of the folks that are, I work with are some of your participants in the conference here. We've worked with some of the largest growers in the world. We're pleased to help any way we can. We have a nonprofit, the Center for Sustainable Agricultural Excellence and Conservation, which is for farmers by farmers. And it's for nonprofit education to help people become growers or to go from, from the small to the large. And we have some resources there at csaec.org. We are grateful for the opportunity to share about why food safety matters. I want to leave you with, if one of us fails, all of us failed. Let's stick together and do the next right thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was a very informative talk and definitely learned quite a bit and touched on some topics that I definitely didn't think we'd touch on.
Steve, it's always amazing to work with you guys. I kind of miss the fact that you guys aren't smoking, talking to me, because the conversation just gets better and better. Oh, yes, you are, Marty. Good job. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate all the information you put in here. Like I was saying earlier, there's so much of the stuff that I feel like is really going to help people sidestep if they pay attention and take notes and listen. Obviously, as you know, as a consultant, you can't always guarantee that aspect of it. But I think you did a great job highlighting a lot of, like I was saying, the challenges for even people that already know how to grow. Just kind of like what you were saying before about not, getting into the debate about what system is better or how to do it. Everybody needs to do these things regardless of what you decide to do, making your decisions, documenting them, seeing them through, all things that may sound just like common sense, but are way more complicated if you've never actually tried to write it down on paper. So thank you for putting all that together, and hopefully everyone will benefit from it.
Thanks, guys. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and we look forward to doing this again.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. I'll see you on the line.
Great. I'm working with Roger here. He's having a last minute issue connecting. He'll be with us here any second. Do we have any other questions from chat? I wanted to thank everybody again for coming out to this wonderful conference. We have a ton of awesome speakers